I never thought letting him into my house would feel this dangerous. One moment he was just my new coworker, eager, polite, with that annoyingly perfect smile, and the next, he was standing in my living room like he belonged here, peeling away at the walls I had spent years building. His name was Ethan, 24, fresh out of grad school, sharp enough to impress the whole office but still carrying that boyish clumsiness that made people forgive him too easily. And me, I was 31, the guy who knew the ins and outs of the company, the one who had no business noticing the way his sleeves rode up just enough to show veins along his forearms. No business at all. But when Ethan asked if he could drop by my place to talk through a project, I said yes. God help me, I said yes. The city outside was slick with autumn rain when he arrived. His hair damp, his jacket clinging to him like a second skin. I watched him step inside, shivering slightly, his cheeks flushed from the cold. And in that moment, my chest tightened with something I didn't want to name. "Nice place," he said, glancing around with that easy smile. His eyes landed on the shelves of books, the guitar propped in the corner, the framed photo of me and my college friends. He noticed things quickly, too quickly. I poured us drinks, hoping the clink of ice would drown out the pounding in my chest. "It's nothing special," I muttered. He sat on the couch, leaning back, too comfortable for a first-time guest. "Feels like you, though." His eyes met mine in a way that made it hard to breathe. For years, I had kept my life compartmentalized. Work was work, home was home, and the two never mixed. But with Ethan here, the boundaries blurred. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was loaded, charged. We talked about work, sure, the project, the deadlines, the endless meetings. But somewhere in the middle of his laughter, somewhere between the way he teased me about my coffee addiction and the way his knee brushed mine accidentally, or maybe not accidentally, the conversation shifted. "You don't let people in much, do you?" he asked quietly. It was too direct, too intimate. My chest tightened. "What makes you say that?" "Just a feeling," he said, his gaze soft but unrelenting. "You keep people at a distance. Even at the office. You're guarded." I should have laughed it off, made a joke, changed the subject. But instead, I felt the words lodge in my throat like glass. "And yet here you are," I said finally, almost bitterly. His lips curved into a small smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, here I am." That was the moment I realized the danger wasn't in letting him in. The danger was in how much I wanted him to stay. The night stretched on, the rain tapping against the windows like a soundtrack to our confessions. Ethan told me about leaving his small hometown, about how his parents still didn't quite understand him, about the loneliness of starting fresh in a city where no one knew your name. And I told him things I hadn't told anyone in years. How I'd buried myself in work to avoid the silence of my apartment. How I'd convinced myself that being alone was safer than being broken again. "Safer," Ethan repeated softly, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. "But not happier." The words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. At some point, the space between us vanished. Our shoulders touched. His laughter spilled over into the curve of my neck, warm and real, and I found myself leaning in before I could stop it. It was reckless. It was wrong. But when his hand brushed mine, and he didn't pull away, I knew there was no going back. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice hoarse. He looked at me, his eyes wide but steady. "I know." And then he kissed me. It wasn't careful. It wasn't calculated. It was raw, desperate, like he'd been holding it back for months. My heart slammed against my ribs as I kissed him back, the taste of rain and whiskey between us. Every wall I'd built crumbled in that moment. And for the first time in years, I didn't care. But happiness is never that simple. Because as soon as the kiss broke, reality came crashing back. The office, the rules, the fear, pulled away, breathless. We can't. Ethan's face flickered with hurt, but then steadied. Why not? Because it's complicated, I said, the words hollow in my mouth. He studied me for a long moment, his eyes searching, and then he whispered the words that would change everything. You're not the only one with secrets. The room went still. My pulse thundered in my ears. What do you mean? Ethan hesitated, his jaw tightening, before finally speaking. There's something you should know. Something about me. And if I tell you, you'll never see me the same way again. And just like that, the night turned into something else entirely, something dangerous, something fragile, something I couldn't walk away from even if I wanted to. That was the beginning of it all. The rain outside fell harder, but inside, the storm was only just beginning. Silence can be the cruelest sound in the world. After Ethan's words, the room became heavy, suffocating, as if every drop of rain outside was pressing down against the glass, holding us hostage. You're scaring me, I admitted, my voice low. He didn't look away. His eyes locked onto mine, burning, steady, yet vulnerable. Good, because that's exactly how I feel every single day scared. The way he said it quiet, broken made my chest ache. I had expected something light, something we could brush aside. But no, Ethan wasn't playing. I swallowed hard. Then tell me, whatever it is, just say it. He leaned back against the couch, ran both hands through his damp hair, and let out a shaky laugh. You think I'm some golden boy, don't you? The guy who has it together, who walked into that office with everything figured out. I stayed quiet, not trusting my voice. But that's not me. Not even close. His gaze flickered toward the window, toward the rain-slicked night. I didn't come to this city just for a job. I came here to run, to get away. My stomach tightened. From what? From the truth. He turned back to me then, his expression raw, stripped of every layer of charm I'd seen at the office. From the fact that back home, everyone knows I'm gay. Everyone. And they made damn sure I wouldn't forget it. I froze, the confession slicing through me like a blade. He kept going, his words spilling out faster, harsher. I didn't just leave a small town. I left bruises, whispers, people who looked at me like I was less than human. And when I finally told my parents, they told me I was their shame. His throat worked as if swallowing glass. So yeah, I packed up my life and came here, pretending like none of that ever happened. Pretending like I could just start over. My heart twisted. I had spent so long building walls around myself that I had never considered the kind of battles Ethan might be carrying under that easy smile. Ethan, I began, but he cut me off. And then there's you. His voice softened, but it shook at the edges. You walk around like nothing can touch you, like you've got this armor no one can break through. But I see it. I see the cracks. And for some reason, that makes me want to get closer, even if I know I shouldn't. The words struck harder than I was ready for. I had spent years perfecting the art of hiding. How the hell could he see straight through me? I looked away, staring at the half-empty glasses on the table. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. He leaned in, close enough that his breath brushed against my cheek. And so do you. My chest was tight, my pulse racing. I wanted to push him away, to end this before it spun further out of control. But when I turned to meet his eyes, the fight drained out of me. His gaze wasn't demanding. It wasn't manipulative. It was pleading. For the first time, I saw Ethan not as my coworker, not as the kid with the bright smile, but as someone who had been fighting battles I couldn't imagine. Someone who needed connection as badly as I did. And I hated myself for how much I wanted to give it to him. The night spiraled from there. Not with more kisses. Not yet. But with truths unraveling like threads pulled from an old sweater. I told him about Daniel. The name alone made my chest tighten. My first love. My first heartbreak, the guy I thought I'd spend my life with until he left me for someone braver. Someone who wasn't afraid of being seen. I thought if I kept my head down, if I just focused on work, I could bury it. I said, my voice rough. And maybe I did. For a while. But then you showed up. Ethan's eyes softened. And I messed everything up. No. I admitted, exhaling shakily. You reminded me what it feels like to be alive again. The words hung between us, dangerous and electric. Neither of us moved for a long time. The rain eventually eased into a drizzle, but the air inside stayed heavy, charged with something that couldn't be undone. At some point, Ethan stood, pacing the room like a caged animal. So what now? We just pretend tonight didn't happen. I hesitated. The logical part of me screamed yes. Pretend. Forget. Go back to the way things were. But the other part, the part that had been silent for too long, was louder now. I don't know if I can. I admitted. He stopped, turned, and stared at me. Hope flickered across his face like lightning. Then don't. The simplicity of his words nearly broke me. It was almost midnight when he finally gathered his jacket, preparing to leave. I walked him to the door, both of us hesitant, both of us unwilling to end the night. On the threshold, he paused, looking at me with a softness that undid me. I wasn't lying earlier. He whispered, "You're not the only one with secrets. But maybe we don't have to carry them alone anymore." Before I could reply, he leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to my cheek. Just a whisper of a kiss, but it burned hotter than fire. And then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving me with nothing but the echo of his words and the pounding of my own heart. The days that followed were torture. At the office, we moved around each other like satellites caught in orbit, never colliding but never far apart. Every glance was a secret. Every brush of his arm against mine was a spark. People noticed. Of course. They always do. "Looks like you've got yourself a shadow," one of my colleagues teased one afternoon as Ethan lingered near my desk. "Careful. He might be gunning for your job." I forced a laugh. But Ethan's gaze found mine across the room, steady and knowing. Nights were worse. I'd lie awake replaying every moment, every word, every touch. The memory of his confession, of the desperation in his voice, haunted me. And I knew that if I let this go on, if I let him in, I'd never be able to go back. But then again, maybe I didn't want to. One evening, a week after that night, he showed up again. No pretext. No excuse. Just a knock at my door and those wide, searching eyes when I opened it. "You didn't answer your phone," he said softly. I stepped aside without a word, letting him in. He shrugged off his jacket, his hair slightly mussed, and I couldn't stop staring. I couldn't stay away. He admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The words shattered whatever resolve I had left. This time, when our lips met, there was no hesitation, no holding back, just fire-hungry, reckless, inevitable, and for the first time in years, I stopped running. Desire has a way of making you reckless. For days after that kiss, the real one, the one where neither of us held back, I moved through life as though I were carrying dynamite in my chest. At work, I forced myself into routine, reports, deadlines, small talk with colleagues. But beneath it all, Ethan's presence burned like a fever I couldn't shake. It wasn't just the way he smiled across the room, or how he leaned a little too close when he asked me a question. It was knowing what his lips felt like, how his hands had clutched my shirt as though I was the only thing keeping him standing. And it was killing me. A week later, the first crack appeared. We had stayed late at the office, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing above us. Most people had already gone home. Papers littered my desk. But neither of us was working. Ethan perched on the edge of the table, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up, watching me with that infuriating intensity. "You're avoiding me," he said finally. I didn't look up from the stack of documents. "We're at work." "That's not what I asked." My jaw tightened. "I'm trying to keep us from making a mistake." Ethan let out a sharp laugh. "You think what happened was a mistake?" His voice cut through me. I set down the papers and finally met his eyes. "It doesn't matter what I think. If anyone finds out, it's over. For both of us." "Over?" He tilted his head. "Or just the beginning?" The question hung between us. Dangerous. Tempting. I stood, pushing the chair back a little too forcefully. "You don't get it, Ethan. People talk. Offices like this, they eat rumors for breakfast. You want to be taken seriously here. You can't give them ammunition." His gaze didn't falter. "So what am I supposed to do? Pretend nothing happened? Pretend I don't—" He stopped himself, his voice breaking. I swallowed hard. "Yes, pretend." For a moment, I thought he'd walk out. Thought I'd finally drawn the line that would push him away. But instead, he stepped closer, his hand brushing mine on the desk. A jolt shot through me. "Tell me you don't feel it," he whispered. Couldn't. God help me. Couldn't. The weeks that followed became a dance of fire and restraint. We stole moments where no one could see, lingering glances in the elevator, fingertips grazing in the copy room, hushed conversations in empty hallways. And yet, every time I let myself fall, I pulled back twice as hard. Because I knew the risk. I had seen what whispers could do, how quickly respect could crumble under suspicion. But Ethan, he didn't care. Or maybe he cared too much. He wanted me to fight for us, even before we had a name for what we were. One night, after another long day, he showed up at my apartment unannounced. His face was pale, his eyes stormy. "They know," he said, his voice trembling. My blood ran cold. "Who?" "Two of the guys from our floor. They saw us leaving together last week. They're saying things. You know how it spreads." I felt the walls closing in. Everything I had built, everything I had tried to protect, it was all slipping. "What did they say to you?" I asked, my voice low. Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. "Nothing to my face. But I heard them. I'm not an idiot." My hands curled into fists. "Damn it." He stepped closer, searching my eyes. "So what now? Do we let them win? Do we just stop?" I wanted to say yes, to cut the cord, to protect us both. But looking at him, standing in my doorway with fear and defiance written across his face, I knew I couldn't. I reached out, cupping his cheek. "No," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm not letting you go." The relief that flooded his face nearly shattered me. He leaned into my hand, closing his eyes. "Then we fight." From that night on, things changed. We weren't just hiding anymore, we were surviving. The office became a battlefield of whispers and sidelong glances. Every smile, every word, every step had to be calculated. But in the quiet of my apartment, when the city outside hummed with neon and sirens, we found a refuge. Ethan would curl against me on the couch, his head on my shoulder, and for a few hours the world couldn't touch us. You make it feel like I belong somewhere, he told me once, his voice muffled against my shirt. I kissed his hair, my chest aching. You do. Right here. And yet, beneath the tenderness, fear gnawed at me, because secrets have a way of demanding to be told. And ours was getting harder to contain. It all came crashing down one Friday evening. The company was hosting a networking event. Some pretentious mixer with too much wine and forced laughter. I hadn't planned to go, but attendance was strongly encouraged. Ethan arrived late, his tie perfectly knotted, his smile practiced, but his eyes sought me out instantly. We stayed apart, careful, cautious, but people notice patterns, even the ones you try to hide. Halfway through the night, I overheard it. Two colleagues near the bar, whispering just loud enough. Look at him, always hovering around him. You think, oh, please, it's obvious. My chest went tight, anger burning beneath my skin. But before I could react, Ethan appeared at my side, his hand brushing mine just briefly, grounding me. Don't, he murmured. They're not worth it. I looked at him, at the steadiness in his gaze despite the storm swirling around us. And for the first time, I realized something. Maybe this wasn't just about hiding anymore. Maybe this was about daring to be seen. Later that night, after the event, we walked together under the city lights. The air was cool, the streets slick with rain. Ethan slipped his hand into mine, bold, defiant. What if they all find out? He asked quietly. I squeezed his hand. Then they find out. His breath caught. You mean that? I stopped walking, turning to face him. I'm tired of living in fear. Tired of hiding. If being with you means risking everything, then so be it. For a moment, he just stared at me, his eyes wide, glistening. And then he pulled me in, kissing me right there on the street, under the glow of streetlights, where anyone could see. And I kissed him back, because for the first time in years, I wasn't ashamed. I was free. Freedom is a dangerous drug. Once you've tasted it, it's impossible to go back. After that kiss beneath the streetlights, everything shifted. It wasn't just stolen moments anymore. We weren't whispering in shadows. We weren't dodging every glance at the office with guilt heavy in our chests. For the first time, I let myself breathe, let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we could survive this. But the world is never kind to men like us. The rumors didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. A laugh a little too sharp when Ethan lingered near my desk. A pointed question from a manager about professional boundaries. The sideways looks that lingered too long in the break room. And then came the email. It wasn't signed. No subject line. Just one line in the body. We all know about you. Be careful. I read it 3 times. My stomach curdling with dread. I deleted it instantly, but the words etched themselves into me like a brand. When I told Ethan, his reaction was not what I expected. He didn't panic. He didn't crumble. He just clenched his jaw, his eyes hardening with something I hadn't seen in him before. Let them talk, he said. Let them send their cowardly emails. They don't get to decide how we live. You don't understand, I argued, pacing the room. This isn't just about whispers anymore. This is targeted. If management gets wind, then what? Ethan snapped, standing. We lose our jobs. We start over somewhere else. Fine. I'd rather lose everything than keep living like we're something dirty. His voice cracked, raw with anger and pain. My heart clenched. Ethan, I began, softer now. But he shook his head, blinking fast. You think hiding will protect us, but it won't. They'll still come after us, no matter how careful we are. The only choice we have, the only power we get is deciding if we're going to be afraid or not. I stared at him, stunned. This was the same boy who had confessed his bruises and shame in my living room weeks ago. The same boy who had carried fear like a shadow. And now he was standing tall, defiant, daring the world to strike. And I realized was stronger than I'd ever been. The breaking point came at the quarterly meeting. The entire office gathered in the conference hall. Rows of suits and dresses under the harsh fluorescent lights. I sat near the front. Ethan 2 seats away. The safe distance we had agreed upon. Halfway through, during a break, I stepped into the hallway. That's when I heard it. 2 senior staffers by the coffee station. Their voices low but unmistakable. Have you noticed? He spends an awful lot of time with the new guy. Please. Everyone's noticed. It's unprofessional. Disgraceful. Really. I froze, the words slicing into me. When I turned, Ethan was standing just a few feet away, his expression unreadable. He had heard it too. For a moment, we just stared at each other. My instinct was to look away, to retreat, to keep us safe. But then something in me snapped. I walked past the staffers, straight to Ethan. My hand brushed his, deliberately, unmistakably. Their conversation stopped cold. Silence fell like a guillotine. Ready to head back in. I asked him, my voice steady, my chest on fire. Ethan's lips curved into the smallest, bravest smile I had ever seen. Yeah. Ready. We walked back into that room side by side, shoulders almost touching, and though my pulse thundered in my ears, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt proud. The fallout came fast. By Monday, I was called into HR. The questions were clinical, sharp, masked behind concern but dripping with judgment. Are you and Mr. Carter involved outside of work? Do you believe your relationship has impacted your professional performance? I answered with the truth, every word tasting like fire. Yes, we are involved. And no, it hasn't impacted our work. The silence that followed was deafening. When I left the room, Ethan was waiting in the hallway. His hand found mine, just for a second, hidden from cameras, and he whispered, whatever happens, we'll face it together. And I believed him. That night, I lay awake replaying everything Daniel. The years of silence, the fear I had worn like armor, and then Ethan, who had walked into my life like a storm and torn it all down, only to replace it with something terrifying and beautiful. I had spent so long convincing myself that love wasn't worth the risk. But looking at Ethan, I realized the greater risk was losing him. A week later, management delivered their decision. We weren't fired. Not yet. But the warning was clear. Your personal lives must not interfere with company culture. It was a threat disguised as mercy. Ethan read the letter over my shoulder, then tore it in half. They don't own us, he muttered. His defiance lit something inside me. For once, I didn't feel like I was bracing for loss. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something worth fighting for. We didn't break. If anything, the fire only forged us stronger. Our nights together grew softer, steadier. The way he laughed in my kitchen as he burned toast. The way his hand slid into mine while we watched old movies. His head resting against my shoulder. The way he whispered, late into the night, I'm not running anymore. Not with you here. And slowly, I began to believe that maybe just maybe love wasn't something to hide from. Maybe it was the only thing that had ever been real. The night lingered with the sweetness of relief, like the air after a storm finally broke. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it hummed lazily above us. Daniel's breathing was steady beside me, the rise and fall of his chest proof that he had fallen asleep wrapped in the cocoon of something new, something we had both long denied ourselves. But for me, sleep didn't come easy. The images of the day replayed over and over. The argument, the confession, the kiss. The warmth of his lips on mine was still there, haunting me like a brand I never wanted to fade. I turned on my side to watch him. His boyish features softened in slumber, and my chest tightened with an ache I hadn't felt in years. How did I let myself fall so deeply? The next morning, Daniel stirred first. His lashes fluttered open, confusion flashing across his face for a moment until his eyes landed on me. He smiled, the kind of smile that could disarm armies. "Morning," he whispered. I swallowed, suddenly nervous like a teenager caught sneaking around. "Morning." The silence that followed wasn't awkward, but heavy, charged. Both of us seemed to understand that what had happened wasn't something we could tuck away as a reckless mistake. It had weight. It demanded to be acknowledged. "Ethan," Daniel began carefully, his hand inching across the sheets until his fingers brushed mine. "Do you regret it?" The question sliced through me. Regret? No. Fear? Absolutely. I closed my eyes, searching for words that wouldn't betray the tremor in my chest. "No, Daniel. Not regret. But I'm scared. You're younger. You're my colleague. And this complicates everything." He propped himself up on one elbow, his gaze burning. "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't spent months fighting every part of me that wanted to get closer to you?" His voice cracked. But last night, it felt like the first time I could actually breathe. The confession pulled something deep inside me apart. I reached for him, fingers tracing his jaw. "I don't know if the world is ready for this. I don't even know if we are." "Then let's not care about the world for a while," he murmured, leaning into my touch. "Let's just care about us." It was reckless, dangerous, and yet, in that moment, the thought of denying him felt impossible. I pulled him into a kiss, slow and searching, as if trying to memorize every curve of his lips. For a while, the world outside my walls didn't exist. But reality never stays away for long. 2 weeks later, whispers began in the office. People noticed how Daniel lingered near my desk, how his eyes followed me in meetings. The rumor mill spun fast, and I could feel the judgment in every sidelong glance, every half smirk. One afternoon, my manager called me in. "Ethan, I don't want to pry into your personal life, but you know the company's stance on relationships between colleagues, especially supervisors and juniors." His words were polite, but the warning beneath was sharp. I nodded, throat tight. Understood. Walking back to my office, I saw Daniel waiting for me in the hall. He caught the look on my face and stiffened. "They talked to you, didn't they?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. That night, at my apartment, Daniel exploded. "So what? We just stop. Pretend none of this happened because they don't approve." His eyes were wet, furious. "Ethan, I can handle the gossip. What I can't handle is you pushing me away after everything we've been through." "I'm trying to protect you," I said, my voice breaking. "You're not protecting me," he shot back. "You're protecting yourself. From what people will think. From the fear of being seen for who you are." The truth of it burned. He wasn't wrong. For years I had hidden behind the armor of professionalism, of straight-faced lies about who I was. And now, when love finally found me, I was ready to let fear drive it away. I sat down heavily, burying my face in my hands. "I don't know how to be brave like you, Daniel." He knelt in front of me, gently pulling my hands away. Then let me be brave for both of us, until you can catch up. Something in his words cracked me open. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future where I didn't have to hide. A future where his hand in mine wasn't a secret but a truth. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Gossip turned into subtle exclusion, into colleagues avoiding lunches with me, into promotions suddenly slipping from my grasp. I watched Daniel take the brunt of whispers behind his back, and every part of me wanted to shield him. But every time I wavered, he reminded me, with quiet strength, that what we had was worth the cost. The turning point came one Friday evening, at a company dinner. We sat across from each other at the long table, our gazes magnetized even as we pretended to focus on polite chatter. Someone cracked a joke about office romances, and laughter rippled down the line of executives. I felt Daniel stiffen beside me, and something inside me snapped. I set down my glass and said clearly, "For what it's worth, I think love is the least foolish thing people can find in this world, even if it starts in an office." The table went silent. Eyes turned to me. Heat crawled up my neck. But I didn't look away. Daniel's hand found mine under the table, squeezing, steadying. Later, when we left together, he whispered, "That was brave." I smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm learning from you." From that night, things shifted. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the whispers faded. The people who couldn't accept us kept their distance, but others surprised us with quiet support. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Months passed, and our love settled into something steady, unshakable. Daniel moved in with me, his toothbrush beside mine, his jacket on the back of my chair, his laughter filling the corners of my home. Nights were no longer haunted by loneliness but softened by the warmth of his presence. One evening, as autumn painted the city gold, we stood on the balcony watching the skyline. Daniel leaned into me, his head resting on my shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked softly. I kissed his hair. Not for a second. Even with everything we had to fight through. "Especially because of that," I said. "Because it means we didn't give up. And now, I can't imagine a life without you." He turned to me, eyes shining. "Good. Because you're stuck with me." And in the hush of that twilight, with the city buzzing below and the future wide open ahead of us, I finally understood. Love doesn't need permission. It only needs courage. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him close. Whatever storms might come, whatever shadows might linger, I knew this Daniel and I would face them together. And for the first time in years, maybe in my whole life, I was free. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.